my brother mocked me. You can't even hold a job, what a loser! I smiled and said, Don't worry, you'll need my help soon. That weekend he showed up crying because… The words hung in the air, as sharp and cutting as the knife my brother Ben was holding to slice his steak. You can't even hold a job. What a loser! He said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that made the entire dinner table fall uncomfortably silent. I didn't look at him right away. Instead, I sat there, chewing slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's stares, my mother's awkward glance at her wine glass, my father's sudden interest in the bread basket, and my younger sister Sarah's eyes darting between us, unsure whether to smirk or look sympathetic. Ben had always been like this, boisterous, successful, the type of guy who seemed to have been born with a golden ticket in his pocket. Ever since we were kids, he lorded it over me. First it was grades, then sports, then jobs. I was the quiet one, the one who never quite measured up, the one who, admittedly, had bounced between gigs trying to figure out what I wanted. But what he didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that for the past year, I'd been diving deep into the world of cybersecurity and digital forensics. It was a side hustle at first, a hobby that grew into something bigger. Nights spent poring over encryption algorithms and weekends coding tools that could detect and remove the nastiest kinds of malware. I wasn't just some guy struggling to find his place. I was building something, quietly, away from the judgmental eyes of my family. I finally looked up and met Ben's smug expression. A slow, knowing smile spread across my face. Don't worry, I said softly, setting my fork down. You'll need my help soon. The words left my mouth like a loaded gun fired across the table. My mother's brows furrowed in confusion. My father let out an uneasy chuckle, trying to diffuse the tension. Sarah just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. And Ben's smirk faltered just a fraction, a subtle crease of uncertainty in his forehead that he tried to mask with a bark of laughter. I leaned back in my chair, my heart thudding calmly in my chest. Because deep down, I knew the day was coming when the tables would turn. The week drifted by with an eerie stillness, but that smirk I gave Ben stayed with me. It lingered like an unspoken promise. At work, I kept my head down, but at home, I was restless. The satisfaction of putting him in his place was delicious, but it wasn't enough. I needed to be ready. It was Thursday evening when I noticed something strange. I was logged into one of my private servers, fine-tuning a ransomware detection tool I'd been developing on the side. Just as I was about to shut down for the night, an unfamiliar IP address tried to ping my system. It wasn't random. It was like someone testing the locks on a door, looking for a way in. I traced the IP. It wasn't far. It was from Ben's office network. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, maybe just sloppy network security. But the next day, it happened again. And this time, the attempt was more aggressive, using more advanced scripts to try and breach my server's defenses. I stared at the screen, the pieces clicking together. Ben's company. He owned a high-profile marketing firm, built on the kind of high-value client data that made hackers salivate. If his network was compromised and his IT team wasn't catching it, it meant trouble. Big trouble. That weekend was going to be interesting. Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. I rubbed my eyes and picked it up. It was a text from Ben. Just one line, but it said everything. Hey, you busy? Need to talk. Urgent. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I scrolled through my notifications. An alert from a cybersecurity forum I frequented caught my eye. Someone had posted about a new ransomware strain circulating, one that encrypted not just files but entire system backups. The payload was advanced, military-grade stuff, with ransom demands in the six-figure range. It was designed to hit high-value targets, companies that couldn't afford downtime. My stomach twisted. I had a feeling I knew exactly who the latest victim was. By midday, Ben showed up at my apartment. No pretense, no swagger. His usual tailored suit was replaced with wrinkled slacks and a polo shirt. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. I opened the door, leaning casually against the frame. Well, look who's here. Ethan, please, he said, his voice cracking. I need your help. I stepped aside, letting him in. He paced my living room, running his hands through his hair. It's bad. It's really bad. Someone hacked into our servers, our client files, financial records, contracts, everything's encrypted. We're locked out. Ransomware? I asked, though I already knew. He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. They're demanding $250,000 in Bitcoin. If we don't pay by Monday, they're threatening to release all our data online. It'll ruin us. I sat down, crossing one leg over the other. And your IT department? They're clueless. Ben admitted, dropping his head into his hands. They keep saying it's beyond anything they've seen before. I don't know who to turn to. That's why I thought of you. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. My big brother, the one who had always looked down on me, was now at my mercy. And oh, how sweet it was. I told you, I said softly. You'd need my help soon. His head snapped up, his face a mixture of desperation and disbelief. You knew this was coming? I shrugged. I didn't know this was coming, but I knew eventually you'd hit a wall. And now you have. Ben's shoulders sagged, and for the first time in years, I saw the facade of invincibility crack. Can you fix it? Please. I'll pay you. Whatever it takes. I stood and walked to the window, watching the sun sink below the horizon. I could fix it, I said, letting the words hang there. I could break the encryption, trace the attackers, even recover your data. He looked up, his eyes lighting up with hope. Really? You can? I turned to face him, arms crossed. But why would I? His mouth fell open. Because we're family. You're my brother. I laughed, a sound sharp and humorless. Family? Like when you called me a loser? Like when you mocked me in front of everyone, made me feel like dirt? Ben's face turned crimson, and for a moment, I thought he might actually apologize. But instead, he said, that was just talk. You know how I get. I shook my head. You've spent years making me feel like less than nothing. And now you want me to be your savior? He was silent, and I could see the panic setting in. Ethan, please. My business, it's everything. If I lose it, you'll lose it, I said, my voice calm, controlled. And maybe it's time you learn what it's like to be on the outside, begging for help. I picked up my phone, scrolling through some emails. I've already seen traces of how deep this hack goes. It's not just files. They've compromised your backups, your cloud storage. Even if you pay the ransom, they'll leak your data anyway. You're done. Ben slumped onto the couch, his head in his hands. There has to be something you can do. I stared at him, the brother who had once called me useless. I let the silence stretch, long and heavy. Then, with a quiet, final voice, I said, you should have thought of that before. The weight of Ben's silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered every family dinner where he'd mocked me, every time he'd snickered when I mentioned a new job, every dismissive wave of his hand when I tried to talk about my cybersecurity work. The sympathy evaporated. Ethan, he finally said, his voice raw and low. I'll do anything. Please. Just tell me what you need. I raised an eyebrow. Anything? He nodded, desperation twisting his features. Yes. Anything. I let the words linger, weighing their significance. Ben, the golden boy, the untouchable success, reduced to a man begging his loser brother for salvation. It was almost poetic. Here's what I need, I said, stepping closer. I need you to understand how it feels to be powerless. To have no one willing to lift a finger for you. To realize that your arrogance and entitlement have consequences. Ben's shoulders slumped further. His hands trembled slightly as he clasped them together. I get it. I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I tilted my head. Is that an apology? His lips pressed into a thin line. Yes. I'm sorry. I studied him, trying to decide if I believed him. But the truth was, it didn't really matter. This wasn't about his apology. It was about me reclaiming something I'd been denied for so long: respect. You know, I said quietly, I could have let you sink. I could have watched as your company collapsed, as your clients abandoned you, as you scrambled to clean up a mess you didn't even understand. Ben swallowed hard, his eyes shimmering with tears. But you didn't. You're here. I gave a small, humorless smile. No. I'm not here to fix your problem. I'm here to remind you that actions have consequences. I'm not your safety net. Not anymore. He stared at me, incredulous. You're really going to let me fail? I'm not letting you fail. I corrected him. You did that all on your own. I could see the realization settling in, the weight of it crushing down on him like a landslide. He had no backup plan. No secret weapon. Just the harsh truth of his own arrogance catching up with him. I grabbed my jacket, heading for the door. Good luck, Ben. You're going to need it. His voice cracked behind me. Please, Ethan. But I didn't turn around. I walked out, closing the door behind me with a quiet finality. The air outside was cool, a sharp contrast to the suffocating tension I'd just left. I took a deep breath, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of control. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to catch up. I was ahead. I was the one walking away. As I stood there under the fading light of the setting sun, I realized something profound. I didn't need his approval, his validation, or even his gratitude. I was my own person, capable and strong in ways he would never understand. And that, more than anything, was the sweetest revenge of all. I hadn't even made it halfway down the block when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, unsurprised to see Ben's name flashing across it. His desperation was palpable through the missed call and the frantic string of texts that followed. Ethan, please. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I'll make it right. I promise. Just tell me what you want. I silenced the phone and slid it into my pocket. I wasn't going to respond. This wasn't about punishing Ben, it was about finally standing up for myself. For years, I'd bent over backward trying to prove my worth, to show my family, and especially Ben, that I wasn't a loser. Now, I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. I spent the rest of the weekend in quiet contemplation, sifting through the fragments of our family dynamic. The constant need for approval, the casual dismissals, the jokes at my expense, it all seemed so small now, like background noise I could finally mute. By Monday morning, I heard from Sarah. She sent a text that was hesitant but filled with subtle concern. Hey, I heard Ben's in some deep trouble. Mom's freaking out. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long moment, debating how to respond. Eventually, I typed back a simple, I'm fine. Hope he learns something from this. Her reply came quickly. Did you help him? No. I sent, and left it at that. I imagined the scene at Ben's office, the frantic calls to IT, the panic spreading through the staff, the realization that no one could fix the problem. I knew exactly what steps he'd taken, the frantic attempts to restore backups that were already compromised, the futile negotiations with the hackers. He was probably calling in every favor he could think of, grasping at any chance to salvage his empire. But I stayed silent. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, I took a walk through the neighborhood, the crisp air biting at my skin. I felt lighter, as though I'd shed a burden I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. I passed the coffee shop, the one where I'd spent countless evenings with my laptop, honing my skills, diving deep into the world of digital forensics. I paused for a moment, watching the glow of laptops through the window, remembering the hours of work that had brought me to this point. This wasn't just about Ben. This was about me. About the quiet power of perseverance, of refusing to be dismissed, of standing tall in the face of those who underestimated me. I knew Ben would be scrambling for days, maybe weeks, trying to undo the damage. And maybe he'd come out the other side a little more humble, a little less sure of his place at the top of the world. But I also knew something else. He wouldn't get there with my help. By Wednesday, word had gotten around. My phone buzzed with messages from old acquaintances, people I hadn't heard from in years, all hinting at Ben's predicament. Hey, I heard your brother's company is in trouble. Are you okay? Is it true that they got hacked? Pretty bad stuff. Thought you might know something. I didn't reply. The truth was, Ben's crash and burn was more public than I'd anticipated. Local news outlets were picking up the story. Prominent marketing firm crippled by cyber attack. The headlines read. His clients were furious. Lawsuits were probably already being drafted. And Ben was drowning. That evening, I found myself at the window, looking out at the city lights, reflecting on everything. I thought about all the times Ben had laughed at me, dismissing my interests, my work, my ambitions. To him, I'd been a joke, an afterthought. And now, without even lifting a finger, I'd become the person he needed most. And I wasn't going to help. The temptation was there, sure. Part of me wanted to walk back into his office, flex my skills, and save his sinking ship, just to prove that I could. But another part of me, the deeper, quieter part, knew that would only reinforce the same toxic pattern. He'd go back to his old ways, and I'd go back to being the convenient scapegoat. No, I wasn't going to fix it for him. Not this time. Instead, I focused on my own path. I reached out to a few contacts I'd made in the cybersecurity community, discussing potential collaborations and contracts. My skills had value. I wasn't going to waste them on someone who'd spent years belittling me. By the time the weekend rolled around, I felt a strange sense of peace. The weight of Ben's expectations, the constant need for his approval, had lifted. I was free to chart my own course, to pursue the work I loved on my own terms. I knew Ben's life was unraveling. I knew he was probably losing clients, money, maybe even his business. And while a small part of me felt a pang of guilt, it was quickly overshadowed by the deeper satisfaction of knowing I had finally broken free. By the following week, it was no longer just whispers and texts, it was public. Ben's firm was featured on a major business news outlet's website. Major marketing agency crippled by cyber breach, clients left in the lurch. His polished image had shattered, and the public was feasting on the downfall of a man who had once seemed untouchable. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through the article, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and something heavier, something like pity, though it didn't reach my heart. The piece detailed how Ben's company had been unable to recover its files, how negotiations with the attackers had failed, and how clients were pulling out in droves. The story painted him not just as a victim, but as someone who had neglected basic security measures. And in truth, that was exactly what he had done. Trusted flashy ID teams without real depth, without the kind of vigilance that could have prevented this disaster. That afternoon, I got a call, not from Ben, but from Sarah. She sounded hesitant, her voice soft. Ethan, I don't know if you've seen the news. I've seen it, I said quietly. There was a pause. He's a mess. He's completely falling apart. I stayed silent, waiting. I don't know if he's called you, she continued. But I just thought you should know. He's talking about selling off parts of the company, maybe even closing down completely. It's bad. I closed my eyes, leaning back in my chair. He's finally learning what it feels like, I murmured. Sarah sighed. Ethan, I know he's been horrible to you. I know. But he's our brother. Maybe you could just help him? I finished for her. She hesitated, then said, I guess. Or at least talk to him. I thought about it. I thought about the years of biting my tongue, of trying to please, of quietly letting Ben's insults roll off me while I struggled to find my footing. I thought about the quiet nights spent learning, building, creating something meaningful while he sat atop his throne, laughing at me. No, I said finally. He's made his choices. Now he has to live with them. Sarah was silent for a long moment before she whispered, I guess I understand. I could tell she was torn, caught between the familial instinct to mend fences and the recognition that Ben had crossed too many lines. I just don't want to see him completely destroyed, she said softly. Neither do I said. But this isn't my mess to clean up. We ended the call quietly, the weight of unspoken words lingering between us. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next few days were filled with silence, no frantic calls, no desperate texts from Ben. I assumed he was too busy scrambling to salvage what was left of his business. Or maybe, finally, he realized there was nothing I could, or would, do for him. Then, late one evening, I heard a knock at my apartment door. Not the sharp, impatient knock of a courier or a neighbor, but a quiet, hesitant tap. I opened it to find Ben standing there. His clothes were rumpled, his shoulders slumped, and for the first time in my life, he looked genuinely small. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice hoarse. I stepped aside, and he shuffled into the living room, sinking into the couch like a man collapsing under invisible weight. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "They're leaving. The clients. The partners. Everyone. I can't fix this." I remained standing, arms crossed. "What do you expect me to do, Ben?" He buried his face in his hands. "I don't know. I thought maybe you could at least tell me what went wrong. Help me understand it." I let out a slow breath, my heart a mixture of old resentment and the faintest stirrings of sympathy. "You didn't take the threat seriously. You surrounded yourself with people who told you what you wanted to hear. And you ignored the one person who could have warned you." His voice was barely a whisper. "I know." For the first time, there was no arrogance, no bravado. Just a broken man, realizing the full weight of his mistakes. For a long moment, I stood there, staring at the brother who had spent his life cutting me down. Watching him now, shoulders hunched, face buried in his hands, I felt a faint twinge of the old desire to fix things, to step in and make everything right. But I stayed still. "You want to know what went wrong?" I said finally, my voice calm, measured. "You built a castle on sand, Ben. You thought because you had money and influence, nothing could touch you. But you never listened, never respected the quiet work, the unglamorous but vital details that keep a system secure." He didn't look up, but I saw his shoulders tighten. I thought I could handle it." "You can't handle what you don't understand," I said. "And you never cared to understand." Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and broken. "So what do I do now?" I felt a strange sense of release, as if I were finally closing a chapter that had haunted me for years. "Now," I said quietly, "you learn. You rebuild if you can. You apologize to the people you've hurt and stop expecting others to clean up your messes." Ben's head dropped lower. "And you?" I met his gaze, my voice firm. "I'm done, Ben. I'm done carrying your weight. It's time you stand on your own." The words felt final, like a door gently closing. I turned and walked to the door. "You know the way out." He didn't protest. He just sat there, staring at the floor, as I stepped outside into the night air. For the first time in my life, I felt free.